It's a heartbreaking and complicated case out of El Paso County. Back in 2009, baby Abraham's life changed forever before he was even 6 weeks old. When we started looking into why the woman arrested was never charged, the DA's office reopened their investigation. But the question remains, what happened to baby Abraham? Baby Abraham will never walk on his own, care for himself, maybe even be able to say I love you to his mother. Or his dad, who wakes up early for 8 hours of physical therapy before 8 hours on the graveyard shift. The left side of Abraham's body dead after permanent irreversible brain injury.
Including his hands, including his leg, including his feet.
Doctors say this will be the rest of his life.
It is an appalling situation.
But the G'day family attorney says they deserve answers and justice for what happened 3 years ago when Abraham was just 30 days old.
She knows what happened to him. She's the only one that knows.
Attorney Steve Shapiro and El Paso County Sheriff's investigators say Lily and Veronica Turner should be held accountable for baby Abraham's brain injury. They say the non-accidental injury happened here at her foster home in Peyton. Abraham and his sister living with the new foster mother while their parents were being investigated for unfounded child abuse claims. In those 5 days, investigators say the 5-week-old suffered subdural hematomas from either being shaken or shaking and slamming. The police report goes on to describe a panicked Turner calling neighbors and babysitters for help after the baby vomited repeatedly through the night, stopped breathing at one point, and twitched in an odd way for an infant. We learned later the twitching episodes were seizures.
Today, the Insider Exclusive goes behind the headlines in Shaken Baby Mystery, Abraham G'day's story, to examine how Stephen Shapiro has successfully represented Abraham and his family and is still pursuing matters against the foster parents, the Turners. In an almost classic Shakespearean tragic comedy of errors, a medical misdiagnosis of a skull fracture by a Colorado radiologist of little 28-day-old Abraham G'day resulted in Abraham's removal and placement to the foster home of Glenn and Lillian Turner. 6 days later, when a pediatric radiologist at the Children's Hospital in Denver, Colorado reviewed Abraham's head CT, it was determined that the skull fracture was a misdiagnosis. But during those critical 6 days while Abraham was still under the sole care of the Turners, Abraham vomited, he stopped breathing, his limbs went limp, and he was unresponsive. Mrs. Turner did not call 911. Rather, she called her neighbors, who in turn reported to the police that Mrs. Turner even thought that Abraham had died. Mrs. Turner then waited hours before taking Abraham to an urgent care clinic. The physician at the clinic told Mrs. Turner to take Abraham to the nearest emergency room immediately. She ignored these instructions, told DHS that Abraham only needed to go to the emergency room if needed, and then took Abraham to Walmart. When DHS returned Abraham to his parents, they did not advise them that Abraham had been taken to the clinic or that he may need to go to the emergency room. Shortly after DHS left, Abraham began twitching and shaking. Abraham was rushed to Denver Health via ambulance. He suffered 10 seizures on the way. He was then transferred to the Children's Hospital, where he was diagnosed with a severe traumatic brain injury caused by non-accidental trauma. In other words, shaking or slamming. These were not injuries that could be caused by household accidents. 3 years later, Abraham still cannot stand independently, and he walks with a walker and braces on his leg. He is significantly developmentally delayed and has minimal language skills. In this Insider Exclusive investigative TV special, we will meet Abraham, his father, and their lawyer, Steve Shapiro, who is pursuing justice on their behalf because we all want to know what happened to Abraham during those 6 days with the Turners. Steve Shapiro has built a reputation based on aggressive and creative trial work. He has obtained numerous 6- and 7-figure verdicts and settlements for clients who have been involved in traumatic situations which altered their lives physically, mentally, and financially. And it has earned him the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best trial lawyers in Colorado and in the nation. He has seen many innocent and hardworking people suffer needless injury. And because of that, he is driven to help people who have been harmed by the negligent actions of others. His goal, not only to get justice for Abraham, but to make sure that all children are protected in safe environments where possible, and to hold those accountable for violating the sacred trust to protect all children. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Denver, Colorado. It is my great pleasure to introduce Steve Shapiro to the show. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Well, thank you.
Tell our audience a little bit about your firm and what your firm specializes in.
Our firm is in Denver, Colorado, and we specialize in catastrophic injuries, predominantly brain injuries and spinal cord injuries. We also do large divorces and commercial litigation. But the practice that I'm responsible for is primarily catastrophic injury, brain injury, spinal cord injury.
And today we're talking about a very unusual case. It's almost a Shakespearean comedy of errors that happened, except for the fact that a young boy was seriously injured, Abraham Gade. Tell our audience who Abraham is.
Well, we met Abraham, learned of this shortly after his birth. About 30 days after he was born, wasn't feeling well, was taken to an emergency room. At the emergency room, a doctor determined that they thought he had a fractured skull. He didn't have a fractured skull, but because of that, social services took him to a foster home.
So there was actually a misdiagnosis by a radiologist, wasn't it?
A neuroradiologist, actually.
Neuroradiologist at the hospital.
At the hospital.
And because of that, the government snatched him.
Yes, at 30 days old. Not just him, but also his sister, who was 4 years old at the time.
And they were placed in a home.
They were placed in a home. The Arapahoe County Social Services set him up with Special Kids, Special Families, which had a foster home outside of Colorado Springs.
And the name of this family is the Turners.
The Turners.
Then a lot of negative things happened. What was happening?
What happened was, first the x-ray got reread by a pediatric neuroradiologist to determine there wasn't a fracture. So there was an order for the kids to come back that next day.
Yeah.
What we know is sometime in the middle of the night, sometime early morning, probably somewhere between 4 and maybe 7 a.m., something happened to Abraham. Something happened that was not falling out of a bed or falling down. Something happened, whether it be shaken, whether it be slammed. But Abraham ended up with a severe brain injury that was manifesting itself by him being unable to breathe, unable to manage, to move, to do much. In fact, Mrs. Turner thought she didn't know what to do. She started blowing in his face, trying to get him to be responsive. She ran and got assistance from neighbors. They told him to take her to an emergency room. She didn't do it. She took him to an urgent care center just outside of Colorado Springs. The nurse and I think a doctor came out, saw him, said, "We can't do anything here. He needs more significant help. Take him to an emergency room." She didn't do it. She took him to Walmart. He went to Walmart, and then social services from Arapahoe County came down to pick him up. She was not told, social services was not told at all about the issues that were going on, about what had happened early in the morning. They took him back, gave him to his parents, and he was shaking. He was having seizures during the day. They weren't sure what to do. Abraham's mother doesn't speak English. She's Ethiopian. She doesn't understand English at that time, more so. And Sammy, the father, was working at Porter Hospital. He was finally called to come home. He came home towards the end of his shift, and the ambulance came and they took him to Denver Medical Center, where he was diagnosed with bilateral subdural hematomas from a non-accidental trauma, meaning he was injured severely by these foster parents.
I understand that on the way to the hospital, he suffered like 10 seizures. Is that correct? Something like that?
He was having seizures all day, but yes, 10 seizures in the ambulance on the way to the hospital.
So one of the reasons we're doing this show is there's still a big mystery about what happened to Abraham while he was under the supervision of the Turners, the foster parents, correct?
We don't know what happened to Abraham, except that we know he sustained a severe brain injury while there.
And what is the status of the case against all of the parties that were defendants?
We have been able to reach a resolution with Special Kids, Special Families, who was the agency for the foster parents. They hired them, they trained them, they managed their billing information, and that part of the case has been resolved with a confidential settlement, and we are now looking towards the Turner's own homeowners insurance.
Right, and we talked a little bit about the show here. The insurance company is American Family Insurance.
It is.
That has out and out denied any responsibility, right?
Denied coverage,
Yeah.
denied a defense,
Right.
and has denied will not have any involvement.
And as a result of denying the defense, you have an additional claim against them, don't you?
We are bringing a bad faith claim against American Family Insurance for the additional damages that were not recovered with the first settlement.
In these kinds of cases, what are the challenges that a law firm faces in trying to prove them?
You know, this case, I think the biggest challenge at the beginning was trying to understand what had happened and then trying to determine who could have potential responsibility for what happened, because this was so bizarre. I think the other issue that came up in this case that was so significant to us is he ended up on Medicaid and was getting horrendous care, was not progressing, was really absolutely stagnant in he had no brain injury care, he had no rehabilitation provided to him. Our thrust, our effort was to get him the right care. We have a wonderful children's hospital here. And once we were able to establish the health insurance that he had and then get him into care, he has done amazingly well. That to us was the thing that was the biggest challenge and the most rewarding thing that we were able to accomplish.
Today, Abraham's 3 years old, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
3 years old, and we have his dad, Sammy, with us today, and so we're going to bring them on the show to talk to them. Let's do that right now.
That sounds great.
It is my great pleasure to introduce Sammy and his son, Abraham. Welcome to the show. Take our audience back to the time when this whole ordeal started. What were your thoughts when Sammy came home from the foster care?
Yes, when he coming back foster care, the social service case workers bring them, my children, and then the parking lot, the apartment, all the residents come out, and my daughter, she hold the manager for the apartment, and I hold my son, and he was like black face and no good, he cry, and the manager asking what happened, the baby cry. The case worker say he's trouble, and then we coming in all, manager and the case workers, we coming in our room, and we try to feed him, he take a little bit, and then he feel tired, sleep, and he get out, they watching the case workers, and my daughter, she have a diaper, dairy, everything, we take care, and my son, when he sleep a little bit, he got a shock. When they go out after 15 minutes, the case worker, and he shook him hand a little bit, and
Totally different from before. Totally different from the way he acted before.
Yes.
When you found out what had happened to him, that he had these serious medical problems, what were your thoughts then?
We don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Just we don't know.
Except that he was changed a lot.
Yeah, he changed a lot. He have a big face, and he cry or sleep. He feel sleep, and then he try shake the hand a little bit, and then one way turn again him side, he stop again coming shake, and he sleep, and then he cut the shake. And then after 4 o'clock, I go work.
Yeah.
I called to my manager anyway.
Yeah.
The manager, she was nurse, and then maybe came from cold area, and they give him blanket. I come in to see him again, and then I went to my work. And in my work, Behind 6 o'clock, she came, the manager. She checked him, and then she said to my brother and my wife, go to doctor tomorrow, check up. They don't understand, they don't speak English. Yeah. And then she called me try, about 8 o'clock, he shock more. And then, okay. And then she called me, she in the network, because I'm working basement area. Yeah. And then she called somebody else, nobody, she don't speak English. Sarah, she sleep this night, dark, she can't go out. And then again continue 9 o'clock, too much shock.
You know, in America, we have a court system where when a problem happens, you can get the help that you need to take care of Abraham. And I think you found that with Steve Shapiro, right?
Yes. He got to change a lot. When he got to set Steve Shapiro to therapy, we have 2-time therapy. I got all the time.
Yes.
Exercise therapy.
Right.
He got good progress. He was die, he buried nothing.
Yeah.
He even he not grow up, non-crowding. He's very good now. He crowding and he try to holding the chair and get up.
He likes to move around a lot.
Yeah, yes. He have interest to move up.
Well, we're very glad that he's progressing. We're glad that you're getting the help that you need. And we thank you very much for being on our program.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Daddy.
Steve, tell our audience a little bit about what shaken baby syndrome is.
It is a brain injury. If a baby is shaken, the brain inside the skull flies back and forth, just like if you were in a car accident, just like if you had a sports injury.
Yeah.
And when the brain shakes back and forth, has a coup contra coup effect inside the brain, it's damaged when it's slamming into the portions of the skull that are sharp within the brain.
Does this have to be just one time that this happens, or it has to be repetitive? Or could it be both?
I think it could be both.
Depending on the severity.
It depends on the severity of the shake.
What's the result of baby like Abraham when they undergo this really traumatic experience?
He has a lot of brain death inside of his brain.
It will never recover.
No. He has parts of his brain that when you look at the MRIs that are dead. And he has significant left-sided hemiplegia, which we're hoping he'll walk, but he may never walk. He also has significant cognitive difficulties, developmental difficulties, visual difficulties. These are things that are not going to recover. He needs rehabilitation and he needs assistance in therapy for the rest of his life.
Is he, you know, normally kids go to kindergarten when they're 5 years old in the first grade. Is he getting some sort of extra schooling now to help him?
He's in a special program in the Cherry Creek School District. It has been very helpful to him. He is nowhere near where a 3-year-old would be. He's probably about 1.5 to 2 years behind. We don't know whether he will ever catch up.
Right.
But the school program with the Cherry Creek School District is excellent and will help him develop, hopefully, to be in regular classes, which we don't know at this point, and also to live independently.
Who is usually the person who is the perpetrator of shaken baby syndrome?
Could be parents, could be babysitters. I've seen situations with foster parents like this. It's usually a situation where they don't have the patience when a baby is crying.
And they shouldn't be parents at least at that moment, right?
No, you've got to walk away. You've got to walk away.
As a result of what has taken place, or the questions surrounding the Turners, are they still foster parents right now?
Interesting question in that Mrs. Turner has attempted to run a daycare facility.
She has a license?
No, she tried to get a license, and the state of Colorado has, the Attorney General's office has been instrumental in making sure that doesn't happen.
Great.
And also in the state of Kansas, I believe, in the state of Kansas, they have looked into it, and we have made sure that they understand what the issues are that are
Good.
here.
Good. So it isn't just a matter of getting a recovery, the right kind of recovery for the victims, like Abraham, but also making sure that the people who perpetrate these crimes don't do so again.
Well, that's the goal. You don't want to see this happen again, and you need to understand what happened. And we need to make sure that district attorney's offices, that the sheriff's office, that the criminal prosecutors know how to do these cases and understand why they occur and how they can prevent it by making sure that they prosecute people.
I'm just curious, is there any criminal actions pending against the Turners?
Believe it or not, there are not.
And why not?
They were started. They were stopped.
Yeah.
We have been advised that they're being investigated again, but we have never really gotten a clear explanation as to why they were not just criminal charges for causing the brain injury, but for neglect, for not taking him to the emergency room and getting appropriate care, as she was told to by the urgent care doctor, her neighbors, or just simple common sense.
Right.
But she didn't. And we're very disappointed in Colorado Springs, the El Paso County District Attorney's Office, for not pursuing this at this point, and we're hoping that they will finish the investigation and do it.
Well, we're certainly glad you're following up on it. There's more to come in this case. You'll keep us abreast of that, right?
We certainly will.
All right, and thank you very much for being on our program.
Pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.